Hi, everybody. I'm Gwendolyn Sterk of Sterk Family Law, and I have the honor and privilege to be with Seth Matus today of the Matus Law Office. Welcome, Seth.
Hi, Gwen. How are you today?
I'm great. Well, these are new conditions and new times, right?
They certainly are, and very, very interesting and strange times.
That's true. So today we're going to ask you a series of questions being that you're the employment expert here and a lawyer in that field, and we're first going to look at it from the employee side during this taping. I want everybody to know this is not the individual legal advice for your particular case, but just some general information because Seth can answer and give us some general guidelines. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to our firm or Seth's firm and we'll try to get you the help that you need. So Seth, the first area I wanted to cover today was those leave of absences. So if we were to think about it for a minute, we've heard a lot about the new law that allows employees to receive paid time off during the COVID-19 pandemic. Can you describe how this law works?
Sure, Gwen. The law is called the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. And basically what it does, it gives two different types of leaves of absence. First of all, you can have employees who end up getting sick with coronavirus or they think they have coronavirus.
Sure.
Or it could just be the type of situation where they have a shelter-in-place order. And what happens is they can't work. And we'll talk about what it means to work in a second.
Okay.
If you have people who are like that, they're allowed to have up to 2 weeks off of paid leave because of the coronavirus in order to, where they won't be fired and where they're actually receiving some pay. Separately from that, we have situations like where you have a parent who needs to care for their child because, daycare or a school is closed. When you have people like that, and there is no one else who is able to care for their child, they're allowed actually up to 12 weeks off under this Families First Coronavirus Response Act. And what happens with that is they end up getting 2/3 the regular rate of pay during that period of time. So that would be how that works.
Well, now, are there some instances when an employee would not be eligible for a leave of absence?
Yes, most certainly. I mean, first of all, you need to keep in mind sort of the parameters of this law. So on the one hand, the law says that it only applies to employers who have less than 500 employees. So what that means is if you're working for a really big company, you're not going to be eligible for that.
Okay.
On the other hand, if you're working for a really small employer, let's say you're working for an employer that has less than 25 employees, the way the law is written, that employer can actually say, well, if everybody is going to be needing to take off time for their children, we won't be able to stay afloat.
Okay.
And in that case, what ends up happening is that then the employer is sort of exempt from needing to give leave in that situation.
Got it.
Aside from that,
yeah.
One of the things which is really critical, and when I mentioned before, you need to be unable to work, but what they say under this law is that if you're able to work from home, if you have a computer connection, if you can remote work or telework, that's something where you're not eligible for leave under this law. So even if you're sick, even if you have, you need to be taking care of a young child, if you're able to work through a computer connection, well, you're not eligible for this leave of absence. There's a few other things too.
Okay.
First of all, if, let's just say the company is going out of business, or let's say that there's just not any work which is available for an employee, basically the employee is being laid off or furloughed, well, in that instance, you're not eligible for leave. And
Understood.
finally, what you also need to know is certainly if you are working in a healthcare field, if you're an emergency responder, you're in a bad situation. The Lord knows you're working like crazy at this point, but you're not eligible for this leave.
Got it. Now, once an employee, let's say in an example, they use up that paid leave, can he or she have other types of a leave of absence thereafter?
It really does depend, Gwen. So first of all, you go then to the employer's other policies. Does the employee have PTO, paid time off, available? If
Okay.
so, maybe. If the employer would allow a sick employee or employee to take time off to care for a family member, maybe. But certainly it's not a guaranteed thing. Now, there's also laws such as the Family Medical Leave Act, which would only apply if there's over 50 employees, and there's a number of qualifications for that. Now, certainly COVID-19 might be the type of situation in which an employee would be able to take a leave of absence under the FMLA, but only if you're qualified, and also only if, again, the employer is the right size. And the other thing about the FMLA is, keep in mind, that's leave which is unpaid. The employer does not have to pay for that.
Interesting. Well, we talked about leave of absences. Let's move on to some specific work issues, perhaps. So, for example, if an employee does not want to come into work because of fears of COVID-19, can the employer require him or her to do so?
No, the employer absolutely can. And I think that the only one caveat I would say is, let's suppose we have a situation where we have a business that would be considered a non-essential business, but the employer is insisting we're going to stay open, and employee, you need to come in. That might be the one exception where an employee might be able to resist it. But certainly if you're just having a fear that I could catch coronavirus, that's not sufficient to allow you to stay away from work. The employer can certainly require you to come into work.
Okay. Well, as a follow-up from that, then, is the employer required, if they are saying you have to go into work, to provide protection from COVID-19?
Well, this is sort of an interesting issue. It's evolving very quickly. And so the one law which comes into play is OSHA, which is the Occupational Health and Safety Act. What OSHA is saying, and what the people who are running OSHA are saying, is that maybe this is the type of thing where if an employer is just deliberately avoiding all the CDC guidelines, maybe that's an OSHA violation. Certainly an employer should be taking steps, but there's not something hard and fast that you can say requires an employer to do it. There is one more thing, though. Certainly, if an employee is complaining that the employer is not following, say, what the CDC requires, if they are not issuing protective gear, if they're not having, the 6-foot separation, and the employee complains to the government, or the employee complains to just the employer, the employee in that case could have some claims, either as a whistleblower, that could be the National Labor Relations Act. So there could be some laws like that.
Understood, but that's not something that's going to render immediately relief, correct?
No, absolutely not.
And I think that people just need to understand that these are the parameters of it. So now let's go to the last category. You have a lot of people that we're hearing about, they're unemployed or they may be laid off. So my first question is you hear these different words used, furlough and layoff. Can you explain the distinction between the two?
Sure. Basically what a furlough is an absence which the employer is requiring. It's a mandated leave, but you have the understanding that at the end of the furlough, the employee is going to come back to work. The job is still there.
Okay.
With a layoff, that guarantee is not there. It's not something where there's this understanding between the employer and the employee that, yes, you're going to be coming back. And so that's what the difference is.
Well, that's important to keep in mind, but then the follow-up question for that is, when can an employee then file for unemployment benefits?
Okay. So basically, if you've been laid off, that's easy. Of course, you apply right then.
Right.
If it's a furlough, what ends up happening is that if it's longer than a week, yes, you probably can go and apply in that situation. You won't get it for the full period of time, but you'll get it while you're being furloughed. Now, then there's some other issues. what happens, certainly we have a lot of employers right now who are cutting employee pay,
Right.
or they're working less. So if you're working fewer hours, that is also a situation which maybe you'd have a right to make an unemployment claim. And basically what the issue is, it's whether the amount of pay that you're getting from your employer is less than the pay that you would receive under, for unemployment benefits.
Okay.
If that's a situation, you would actually have a right to apply for unemployment then too.
Interesting. Now, you're hearing a lot of people and the horror stories of their attempts to get the unemployment benefits. Do you have any recommendations for people that are making the application? How can it be a little easier?
Gwen, it is terrible. I actually saw, I believe there are now approaching 200,000 open applications for unemployment benefits.
Wow.
And people are, it's just a huge volume at this point. If you go onto the website for the Department of Employment Security, they're already saying that you can only apply on certain days based upon your last name, the first letter of your last name. But what we've also seen is that, if you are applying, don't do it first thing in the morning because everybody else is doing it then.
Right.
And so probably just try it later on in the day. And most certainly you need to understand, you just need to be patient. You're not you might be on the phone for a very long time. And also the Department of Employment Services will not immediately respond to you just based upon this huge volume. Now, there are a few plus sides for people who are in the situation.
Okay.
Even though it does take a long time, at this point, another part of the Family First Coronavirus Response Act is that there is a longer period of time for unemployment benefits. It used to be 6 months, now it's 9 months. And the other part of it is that once you are finally qualified, there is an additional amount which is paid to you under under this law. And basically you're entitled to get $600 per week more than you would otherwise, during a normal period of unemployment.
Wow, that's a lot of money for some. It may be more than what they're working or what they were earning in the first place. So it's very interesting. Well, I know that navigating this situation is so scary for so many people. They've never been in this situation before. We certainly didn't expect it. So if you're out there and you're listening today and you're navigating through these very difficult issues, know that there's help out there. There's answers to your questions. There's things that can be done. What we want to get a message across to everybody is don't go under the covers and hide from the situation. To the contrary, get help. And Seth, can you tell the individuals listening today what kind of help and services you can provide for them?
Well, certainly. I can help people if they have questions about whether they're eligible for leave. If they need any help with unemployment, I might be able to help. And certainly, again, if they have an employer who is basically requiring them to work in unsafe conditions, I might be able to help them too.
It's great. So Seth, share your contact information at the end today. And if you're out there listening, again, take advantage of what's available to you. Again, don't hide from the problem. Reach out, empower yourself. That's what our firm is all about. Empower yourself with the options to know what you can pursue. So Seth, give us your contact information for those employees out there that need some help.
Absolutely. So people can reach me at my email address. It's Seth, S-E-T-H, .Matus, and that's M-A-T-U-S, at Matus Law Office, all one word, and I know it's long, .com. And then they can also call me at area code 630-470-6875.
Well, thanks very much. And if you're listening today and you have any issues regarding to family law, we can also speak to you, get your referral as you need it, and to make sure that your questions are answered. Again, don't sit back. There's an opportunity here for you to get your answers to questions that you may be experiencing and being troubled about. So don't sit back. Take action now. Thanks again, Seth.
Thank you.